Hi, I'm Addie.
And I'm Coco.
And we're from the Santa Barbara Middle School Team Press here with
Richard Salas.
Nice to meet you, Richard.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
So, what brings you to the Santa Barbara Underwater Film Festival?
Well, I went to Brooks Institute for about 4 years back in the late 70s, and I was on board the Just Love, Ernie's boat, and so we went out diving together the last year and a half that I was in school. And so they asked me to come here to be a part of the tribute, and 4 other guys who were also on that crew at the time. So we're here, we're going to give a 3-minute presentation of each of our work that we've been doing for the last 35 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's an honor to be here.
What is one of your first underwater memories?
Oh my, one of my first underwater memories. You know, when I was a kid, I loved tide pools, and I used to put my arms in the tide pool and look at the animals and everything, and wish that I could make myself small. And many, many years later after that, in 1975, I started to learn how to dive here in Santa Barbara. And that first time that I went down, I saw all my tide pool friends, and I actually realized that I had made myself small. So that was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Cool.
If you could take us one place in the world to go underwater, where would you take us?
Well, you know, out here is great. I think San Miguel Island, because of the amount of invertebrate life, and I like cold water, so it's cold water out there. And it's just because it's so rough out there that it brings the nutrients up from the deep water, upwelling it's called, and feeds all these animals. And you know, on a reef out here, you can't put your finger anywhere without disturbing some animal. There's just so much life. I mean, where else on earth can you see that? Not in a rainforest, not anywhere, where there's just so much life next to each other that, you know, it's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful.
What is one of the animals that you've disturbed when you've gone out to the island?
Disturbed. Well, okay, one time there's an animal called a sea hare. It's like a big slug, and most photographers will swim right past it because it's not very pretty, not very good looking. And so one time I was diving and one fell through the water column. It was up on a piece of kelp or something, and whether it detached itself or got knocked off by the surge, I don't know. But one day I was looking around and I didn't have anything to shoot, and so I found one of those guys, and so I lifted him up and let him go and saw him float through the water column, and so I took pictures of that, and it's in my first book. And so that was probably one of the animals I disturbed. He was fine, but you know, I picked him up and moved him around a little bit. I think I heard him say, "Wee," so I think he enjoyed it.
Luis Hoyos, director of The Cove, says films are weapons of mass construction. How do you think films can help preserve the waters on Earth?
Well, I think one of the things, film and print, if you start to show the animals that are in the water to people who never get to see them, and you show them in a way that people can relate to, even to sort of put personalities to the animals, I think then people sort of see them in a different light and can feel closer to them, and then when they find out that they're maybe endangered, that they care more. You know, nobody cares about something that they don't know about. So I think that it's really important, and up to photographers and writers and filmmakers to show these animals to people who never see them. You know, inner city kids or inner city people or in the middle of the country, people who don't live near the ocean. I think it's really important that they get to see these animals, and that's the reason I made my books.
If you could have us watch, or if you could show us one photograph of yours, what would you show us?
Well, I think there's a photograph over there of a hammerhead shark that I took in the Galapagos Islands. And with hammerheads, they're very shy. Most people think, oh, sharks will come and get you. It's not true. These guys are very shy. So the bubbles that you expel through your regulator scare these sharks away. So what you have to do is first you have to move away from all the other divers because they're all, you know, producing bubbles that scare the sharks. Secondly, you watch them, and sometimes they break off. They're schooling sharks. Sometimes they break off and they go over the reef. That's where you want to be. So I went over there and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and finally the shark started to come over. Now, when the shark comes over, you have to hold your breath because you don't want him to swim away. So you hold it, and you hold it, and the shark's swimming slower and slower. because you can't breathe because you're going to scare. So you wait, and this particular shark came right over me before my eyes popped out of my head, and I got the shot, and then I was able to breathe. So that was fantastic experience, really great.
So what is one film that you would show us?
A film. Well, I haven't seen the film Blackfish yet. I've heard a lot about it. I believe that it's not the best thing to keep dolphins and killer whales inside animal marine parks. I used to go to those parks as a kid. I'll never go back again. I think they're too intelligent, and they're so used to swimming hundreds of miles, and they're in this little sort of kiddie pool. The Cove also I have seen. That's a great movie to just sort of let people know what's going on. Then they can decide. It's up to them, but present them with what's going on. Or Whale Wars, I like those guys too. I like sort of a confrontatory type of approach. There's many different approaches. There's through law, through just witnessing what's going on, through being more aggressive, not hurting anybody, but being in their face or in their way of what they're trying to do. So I think that those are two of the films that would really be good. I think probably Nemo too. I think people, even though it was a cartoon, people started to feel that these animals, again, like I was telling you, have sort of a personality, and they do. They're like any animal, like a dog or a cat. They're all different. They're not all the same. Just because it's a cat, all cats don't act the same. Just because it's a shark, all sharks don't act the same. At least that's been my experience.
Great. So I was on a dive.
And finally, our school theme this year is The Power of Story, What's Your Verse? What do you hope your verse is in the story of water on Earth?
Well, I think my verse is that I want to make a difference, that I want to influence people to pay attention to the ocean, to pay attention to the animals in the ocean, because the ocean gives us over 50% of our oxygen, and I really like breathing a lot. So every other breath is thanks to the ocean, and people don't realize that. They think the trees do contribute a lot to our oxygen and our life, really. But I think if we continue to pull animals out of the ocean, whether for food or for materials or whatever, the ocean is a finite place. It's not infinite. It doesn't go on forever, although most people think because it's so large that you can just keep taking sharks and more sharks. You can't. So I think if I can have some kind of an effect on influencing people to change their minds about their fear around sharks, that would be great. That would be really great. I would feel that I'd lived a successful life.
I agree 100% with that. Thank you.
Sure. My pleasure.